All right, so welcome to another edition of Think with a Drink. This is the weekly webinar series brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. And tonight's topic for this episode, we're going to be talking about tax refunds, specifically what to do with a tax refund, or more importantly, whether or not it's a good idea to get a tax refund. But we figure, right, it's right on the verge of tax filing. Tomorrow is technically the 15th, but because it's Good Friday, they gave us until the 18th. In the state of Massachusetts is actually the 19th, right? I think this might be the farthest you go out, right, Craig?
Is it the 19th, not the 18th? That's interesting. Okay. I'll have to believe
I believe for the state of Massachusetts, you don't have to have it postmarked until the 19th, but that could just be my accountant who's given me some funny information. But
oh, I mean, I think it's federal. Maybe you're right. With the state, it probably is. Yep.
As far as dealing with that. So, okay, so let's get started on this, what to do with your tax refund. I did try to start. We are moving. Okay. Quick little checklist for everybody. Just know the event is being recorded. Just keep your microphones muted. Your cameras, doesn't matter whether they're on or off, because the only thing that is being recorded are the slides on the screen. There is a chat box, however, so we do encourage everyone to use the chat box to ask questions. And my co-pilot, who I will introduce in a second, is here. He's going to be monitoring that and coming up, and just if you do have any questions, and making sure that we stay on time for this evening. Speaking of your pilots, my name is Tom Alessi. I'm the president of the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. I have been in financial services for 23 years now. I'm an investment advisor. That means that I act as a fiduciary whenever giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I want to bring my Vice President, Craig, if you want to introduce yourself. And I know my slide is wrong there for you in terms of your actual time in this thing.
All right, I'll stay younger for another year. So I'm Craig Richardson, Vice President of the Aries Foundation. I've been doing financial services a little over 18 years now. And I work with families and small businesses to help them develop financial plans so they can have a better relationship with their money.
And like I said, Craig will be chiming in as we go along during the presentation, but also he's here if there are any questions that pop up in the chat box. Certainly he'll make sure that either answer them or throw them out so that we can have the audience hear them as well. Some disclosures but I'm not going to read the screen. Just understand we're a nonprofit. This is meant to be purely educational and informational. All we at Aries, myself, Craig, the rest of the team, all we ever say is that if you ever do have questions, whether they be legal, tax, or financial, that you seek out the help of a professional to get those questions answered. Which moves us on to the fun part of this evening, which is this is called Think with a Drink. It's called Think with a Drink because we want it to be more casual and relaxed, and we couldn't think of a better way to do that than if you have something cold and refreshing to be sipping on as we go through the presentation. And for tonight was sort of a special one for us. Tonight we are drinking, this is Awesomeness Union, right? So this is from Jack's Abbey. And one of the things with this is that everybody might know what an IPA is. Craig, you know what an IPA is?
An Indian Pale Ale?
It's very close. It's India. It's India Pale Ale. That is correct, right? So the idea, it's the hops and how the actual ale is brewed. But what Jack's Abbey does is Jack's Abbey only brews lagers. And so what this particular lager is, it is an IPL, which is an India Pale Lager. It is using the idea of the India Pale Ale, but doing it with lager. And when you lager, it's usually done at a colder temperature and you're using a different type of yeast. So that's where Awesomeness Union comes in, is that it's the hops from the IPA done to a lager.
Cool.
I'm going to pour, and Craig, you are drinking the same thing this evening.
I do. I can even show you the can and everything.
You can really see the can. And just a quick note on our friends at Jack's Abbey, right? So if you ever get a chance, they are at 100 Clinton Street in Framingham, Mass. It's great food. You got incredible beers. And one of the nice things about going to the brewery is that they have limited releases, which are only available on tap at the brewery. They're not done in cans, so you can only get them there. And upcoming, they have Mayfest, which is the weekend of the 20th through the 22nd. That's Friday through Sunday, Craig. If you're taking notes on this, to put that down, Friday through Sunday. Everyone is welcome, and Drindles and Lederhosen are encouraged. And certainly you should, RSVPs are recommended. Making reservations are recommended for that. But that's Jack's Abbey, our friends for tonight, and a couple of beers as we go forward into the month of May. They were very kind to make some donation to us with that. So we're going to say skål to Jack's Abbey. Oh, that's so good.
Wondering where you're going to get your Lederhosen from.
All I could think of was, what was that silly movie with the trading places, right? Where she's in the Lederhosen, like, they keep saying to her, but you're from Switzerland. You're from
You're from Sweden.
You're from Sweden.
I was thinking National Lampoon's Vacation when he's up on the stage during the beer fest.
The European vacation, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the agenda is a tax refund a good thing? You know, we say it's making bad choices with your tax refund, which is what takes away from it. Some of the better or good options that you could do with your tax refund. And then should you make changes to not be getting maybe as much as you did, whether that makes sense for you or not. So those are the things we're going to be talking about. So let's start with, is getting a refund a good thing, right? So, you know, whenever you do that and you're getting money, right, it feels good, Craig, right? It feels good that, hey, I'm getting money back.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who doesn't want to get an extra check they weren't expecting?
But here's the thing, where it becomes a danger is to be thinking of this money as found money or free money, because it is neither of those things. This is your money. This is your money that you have basically given to the government. We'll talk about that in a second. The problem is, where people get into a problem is thinking of it as, oh, I got this check, I can go out and do X with it or Y or spend it and blow it type of thing. And that's not really how you should be looking at your tax return. So that's where it gets to be a bad thing. And we'll go into that now with the differences there. But we understand it's better to get than to have to write a check to the IRS, which is why I was delaying until the 19th, which is what that was all about. All right, so why it can be bad, right? So let's face it, it's an interest-free loan to the government, right? This is money that you are letting the government use, and what are they giving back to you, Craig? What are you earning on it?
Not earning anything.
Nothing. You're not getting anything for lending that money to the government. So this is an interest-free loan that you are giving the government. So when you get that money and you think, oh, I got my return, well, the government's just had use of your money for the whole year. Why it's not a good thing. Inflation is another one of those, especially now you're starting to see it, where that's money that's not keeping up with inflation. You're losing out. So you're it's a sort of a double whammy there, right? Where my money's not earning anything, and now inflation is going up, and now I'm getting a hedge where I'm just getting my money back, but now it's less than it actually was at the time I tried to spend it a year ago.
Right. Its purchasing power has gone down from the time that you would have had it in your pocket versus, the government gave it back to you. So.
Exactly. That, I got this with he's chosen unwise. He chose poorly, right?
Poorly.
You may spend it unwisely. And I was trying to think of how that was worded in the Indiana Jones. He's chosen poorly. You may spend it unwisely, right? And that's really where that found money or free money comes in. Oh, I got this check, I'm going to go blow it, right? So, that type of thing can lead to some not so great habits, like spending more than you should or spending it on things that you shouldn't. We'll talk about some of those things in a second. Sometimes people, right, Craig, we see it a lot where people will spend more in the holidays than they probably should have. And it's, well, I'm going to get this refund check and I'm going to make up for that and be able to pay back everything at that time. but you're in this pull and push, right? You're going up and going down, and it's more of looking at what you're doing when you're spending versus saying, well, I'm going to get that refund check and I'll just apply it here.
Yeah, or even worse, right? You get a lot of people out there who want to help you with your taxes and they go, we'll give you a loan on your refund.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. It's one of the bad choices. We'll get there. It's in there.
Right. Yeah.
The other is it's your money, right? So it's your money and you're letting somebody else use it and not getting any value for that. So just always remember that it's don't think of it as, hey, it's free type of thing. And for most people, because we talk about whether it's debt consolidation, building up an emergency reserve or something like that, you could probably use that money in your weekly paycheck versus letting the government have it for a year, right, Craig? For in some cases, just having $20 or $30 extra in your pay could make the difference for some people.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and they don't understand, when they're filling out that form W-4, which is what designates how much taxes you have pulled out, exactly how they should fill that out. I'll just put 0 in or put 1 in, and you have no idea if you're taking out the right amount of taxes or not.
Yeah, and we're going to go through that at the end. We'll talk about that with making changes and some of the things you can do. Right. But so why can it be a good thing? All right. So, it can be a good thing because it limits what you're spending. Like we just talked about that extra. If you were going to blow the extra $20 or $30, then, okay, this is a better way of that. If you're then taking it and using it for good and not for evil, as far as going through everything. But it does limit what you're spending on a weekly basis because it's money that's coming out that you don't have access to. You need to sort of ask yourself what you're doing with the money, and we'll talk about that with the good choices versus bad choices. It's kind of like a fourth savings, but it's not really because, like I said, you're not making anything on it. You are getting this lump chunk of money, but it depends on what you do with the lump chunk of money, right, Craig?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is another issue out there is that people are very bad at saving. So this does become that forced savings account. Once again, the other thing too is if you're going to the government, like you said, you're not spending it, it caps what your lifestyle choice is. So you aren't blowing that extra money. But once again, you already mentioned, it depends on what you do with it once you get those funds.
Right. And I don't know what happened here, but it said spends it unwisely. I don't know. I must have dipped over in terms of that. So I must not have updated this part of the slide. I don't know why it carried over. But anyway, we'll move on from that.
We choose wisely. Yes.
Yeah, I know. You choose wisely. That's better. All right. So when your refund goes awry, right? So this is, I'm getting my refund check and I'm not really doing good things with it, right? I'm using it to put it as a down payment on that item that I've wanted, but you know what? That's outside of my monthly ability to afford it. But I can make the down payment now, and now I've got this payment that I'm going to be stuck with that I shouldn't really be doing. Here you go, Craig. There's your loan company. Now you can do your bit about the refund advance people.
Oh yeah, so everybody, they know that you've got a possible refund coming, so they'll offer you a refund advance. They'll give you a loan on the money you have coming in. So now you spend a year where you didn't get any interest, and now you're going to pay interest on the money that you didn't get any interest on.
Right.
And then usually the reason you do that is because you're going to go out and do that bad spending thing, right?
That's
why you want the lump sum. So I'm going to go buy furniture. I'm going to go buy a TV. I'm going to go buy a large item. Let me get the loan, and then I'm going to pay more for that item because I'm paying interest on money that I never got any interest on.
Yeah, and some of these companies, some of those, you got to read the fine print there, because some of these companies, like Craig said, they're charging you fees and interest, and again, that's money that didn't earn anything that you're now paying on. This is your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and those are the things that really hurt people in the long run. Those bites out of everything really cost and add up.
Absolutely. Don't spend it on, exorbitant entertainment, lavish dining. Don't think, well, hey, we're going to go, let's go splurge now and have, some big meal or something that we really shouldn't be having, because just because you got the lump sum Don't treat it like it's a windfall because it's your money. You should have been doing something with this for the whole year versus just, getting it and blowing it type of thing. And then it's same idea, right? Because that's what happens, right? We get that a lot, Craig, right? People will suddenly decide, I'm going to go out and, like you said, go buy that dining room set or that TV or something that really not a need. It's just like, oh, I've thought about that, but now I can go do it, where it's not really a need, a necessity that has to be done.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, sometimes you'll overspend on the holidays knowing you have that refund coming. And so that's what we call that hamster wheel, right? Yeah. You use it to bail yourself out because you were short for the year. And I got this little windfall coming in the tax return, which really isn't a windfall, like you said, because windfall is free money. This is money you already paid taxes on and gave a free loan to the government. So, but once again, it's that habit. Every year I know it's coming. Every year I overpay, and every year I'm going to use it to dig myself out of the hole I just dug, 3 months ago. So
right, and that is the hamster wheel. That's how that all occurs, because then inevitably somewhere along the line something happens between the end of the year and when you're getting your tax refund back that causes you to have to turn and dip into something else. And guess what? Now you're not paying for the debt that you accrued in December. Now you're paying for the debt you accrued in February, and you got to carry this on, and you just never break out of the cycle. But there are good things you can do. There are reasons that it is actually not a bad thing. Like we said, to go along with that whole, if, as Craig alluded to, that you're not a great saver or don't have good saving habits, this is a way to sort of force you to sort of jumpstart that. And if you take it and use it to pay off that outstanding or to lower any debt that you might have, okay. You're doing it. Don't do the whole lifestyle up and down swing thing, like where I'm overspending at Christmas time because I know at tax filing time I'm going to get this chunk of money. But if you had like student loan debt or an outstanding loan that you use it to pay off, fine. Then okay, now it's going towards something as far as a greater benefit. But like we talked to everybody, Craig, starting an emergency reserve account or putting this to because what's the average right now that somebody has in the bank?
$400.
$400.
Use many, yes.
So that's the average across the United States that someone has in the bank. So if you're one of those individuals where saving, as Craig had mentioned, maybe not a good saver, maybe not good habit on saving, then having this refund and using it to kickstart that and putting it into an emergency reserve. And again, an emergency reserve account should be an account that's not tied to a checking or debit or anything like that. This is just a separate account, maybe a money market that you don't have ready, easy access to, and only there for emergency purposes only. Home improvements. If you're a homeowner and, using it to do some of that upkeep or maintenance or taking care of the property, okay, right? Because that, Craig, goes back to the whole good debt thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting money into your home, and that's adding value. So, depending on what the improvement is, then yeah, I mean, you got a double. You got the home is a little nicer to live in, and the value went up, so you're going to lose the value of that money that you put into it.
You can invest it. Right. And investing it means investing it for now, i.e. something in the short term. Maybe that's just going into the bank. We're not taking risk with it. Or maybe it's investing it, actually putting it into the stock market, whether it's to accumulate for something, in a year or two, or future retirement, kids' education funding, something like that. Okay, we're trying to grow this and make it, and we're using this as that jump start on an account or to set up an account. Fine, all good uses there. Or if you don't have protection planning in place, whether that's disability or life insurance or something like that, maybe it's a time to be looking at that and seeing how you might be able to take that and use it to start putting that in place. Because again, what's the standard, Craig? It was like 58% of the American households have no insurance or underinsured or something.
Absolutely right. Or they, most of their insurance is through their employer. It's not private. They don't own it themselves.
Right. Yeah, which again, it's okay, but let's face it, if you leave your employer, you've got no coverage.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing here, what you're saying though, is when you're trying to use it for a good reason, you're trying to leverage that little windfall you've got. And we can call it a windfall because it's your own money, but that little slush fund that comes in to put yourself in a better position than you would have been. I mean, I don't know how many people died and on their tombstone and said, "I wish I had bought more stuff." Right?
Yeah.
Can you put yourself in a better position? Like either you need some protection. I haven't been able to save money. Well, now I can jumpstart my emergency reserves. Right. So even if it means leaving that debt in place by allowing yourself to have that cash, so next time the emergency does come up, you've got reserves. You don't have to go back onto the credit card. And that's how you get off of the hamster wheel, by taking a different motion, taking the off ramp, putting the money into a savings account.
That's the way to make it happen. Like put it to, in that case, it's okay. Right. So it just depends on you as an individual, how you're dealing with it, how you're looking at it. And some of that comes into whether or not, as we talked about, whether or not it makes sense for you to make the change. Right. So one of the things that you have to look at, and Craig mentioned it, and we'll talk about it in just a little bit with the whole W-4 thing, is just understand that when you start moving the dial, but you could wind up in a situation of having to write a check to the government because they did not take as much out. And for a lot of people, that feels like such a penalty, like, oh my God, I had to write a check to the IRS, like this horrible thing. Well, it's because you had all your money, right? So the idea is ultimately to, and I was going through my daughter with this, with the whole idea of you want to end up at about zero, right? Where you're not getting anything, but you're not owing anything. Like that's sort of like at the base level of what you try to achieve, because then you've done what you needed to do. So the withholdings thing gets a little, back and forth. You got to really play with it ultimately, Craig, right? Is when you come down to it.
Yeah, because like I said, one of the benefits people like is that they have this like forced savings account. But what you don't realize is a lot of times they like it because they're not very good at budgeting. They're not very good at managing money. They're not very good at setting those things up for themselves. So I'm realizing that you can set up, 4 savings accounts for yourself right out of, because everything can be automatically deducted or sent to a different account right out of your paycheck nowadays. So you could have an emergency reserve account that the money just goes to directly from your paycheck, just like they're taking the money out in taxes. The better part about that is now you're getting it over the course of the year. It builds up a value and you get some interest maybe.
Right.
So, or the other one, you're not getting any interest. It's being parked. And then, like I said, all the other things we talked about and what happens when you have that large chunk coming at once.
Right. I don't know what
I
don't know what happened right there. That was weird. I didn't know I could do that. Okay, I'm in the right place now. Wow, that was crazy. So the idea of changing, right? So it's how do you handle small and large windfalls, and we're calling it windfall in that case differently, because in some people's minds they treat, well, I just got this small money, I got a check that came in that was like $20 or $30, like, oh, okay, no big deal. I'm just and it just gets blown. And that's usually what happens without thinking. Larger sums of money we think about, and maybe I'm going to make a use for this, or I'm going to do something with it, right? Without thinking that, what can happen where, if you think about it, it doesn't take a lot. Like it's like less than $3 a day, right? If you had $3 a day to get $1,000 in for the year, right?
Well, the other thing, Tom, too, is like you said, small and large windfalls. I actually had a very close friend of mine, his brother, several years ago, win $1 million on a scratch ticket.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you think, well, geez, he must be all set, right? He must be, living large now. He's all good. He made $1 million. 3 years later, he was back to, his ordinary income being the only income he had. He blew it. He blew $1 million in like 3-4 years. Well, because you don't think it's ever going to end, or you think, well, this giant windfall, I can do all these things.
Right.
And you really got to have the same type of go back to your budget and your plan. Fill bucket 1, fill bucket 2, fill bucket 3. right? And then do you want to increase your lifestyle? And is it going to be a permanent increase or a temporary one?
Right.
Right. In his case, it was a very temporary one.
Yeah.
Felt great for a while, but then no, now not so great. So
Right. And I think that's part of the second one there about short term versus long term, right? And seeing things and perspective from that, like using the money for purchases or blowing it on a shopping spree or taking a vacation with it is short term, right? There's no real long-term implications there. And so you really need to be sitting down and saying, wait, if I am going to get this, I'm going to keep myself getting it, whether you got, a couple hundred or 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever. The average, did you know the average tax return refund is over $3,000?
is it really?
Yeah, it's like 3,300 last year was the average tax refund that was given.
A lot of loans to the government.
It's a lot of money to the government, absolutely. But that's the thing. So it's like, hey, if you got $2,500, it's like, whoa, what would I do with this $2,500? Like I said, that's why we're talking about don't treat it like a windfall. Don't treat it like free money, or found money, because it's your money. You just gave up $200 a month that was, should have been in your paycheck, could have been in your bank, like Craig said, earning interest, where you let the government have it.
Well, I think once again, too, Tom, windfalls can come in lots of different ways. They can come as a tax return, like we're talking about right now. And once again, if you have a plan for where that money's supposed to go, like you like to talk about the bucket system, the first bucket being the emergency reserve, my second bucket being those, mid level things I'm trying to save for, a house, a car, the third one being retirement planning. Do I use that money to fill those buckets and, accordingly? So some people get a windfall, and maybe they settled a lawsuit. They got an inheritance,
right?
They won a scratch ticket. And what you really want to be looking at is filling those buckets. And if they fill them faster, right? You filled one, you filled two, and now you've got three filled unexpectedly sooner. Well, now you can talk about lifestyle changes. Can I have a better lifestyle with that overflow?
Yeah.
Right. So it's really, you still have to have a plan regardless, even when windfalls come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the part of it, is to be thinking from that standpoint and that idea, right? Again, the idea of writing a check, people, get physically ill. They get sick with the idea of I have to pay them, So if you're going to have that scenario where it is going to make you just like, want to vomit basically for having to write a check to go along with your taxes, then don't do it, because you're just going to make yourself ill thinking about it.
Let me give you a better way to think about it, Tom. Think about it as you got a free loan from the government. Cheapest loan you're ever going to get.
Right.
You got to pay taxes either way. You have no choice. But if you wait till the end of the year and you pay actually by the filing date, you don't pay any penalties. You don't pay any interest.
Yeah.
It's the cheapest loan you're ever going to get.
Right. And you've had use of that, and maybe you did something with it. And like I said, so long as you have the money and you've set aside to be able to do it, that's the other side of it, is do you have the money to pay for whatever that number is that you didn't, live too crazy and you built up for it. Well, then, again, if you just put it in the bank and earned some interest, at least you had some interest.
You made some free money on it. Right.
Yeah. Now, as Craig said, if you want to make the adjustment, right, as he mentioned, it is the W-4. You can do that, basically fill one out at the time you get hired, but you can change it really at any time, Craig, right? You can just go in and change it at any time. Here's the thing with it. We're going to go over it in a second, because we will give you the website from the IRS about doing this. And really the thing with this is this is not the most, let's call it user friendly, just in case the IRS happens to be listening in or doing anything with that, the estimator is just that, as they like to say, it's an estimator. So you really got to play with, hey, how many, but you can go out to as many, claim as many numbers as like where I think the limit's like 40 or something that you can go to.
Yeah, and all that does is reduce how much you have to pay in tax down to a minimal amount, which once again, once you file your taxes, then you end up having to pay it in anyway.
Right.
So it's just a matter, do you pay it now, do you pay it later? And what kind of person are you? It's where you can, are you a planner or not a planner? If you're not a planner, then you want to pay it now.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it, but that's the website is there. It's on the irs.gov, but if you look up the tax withholding estimator, it'll take you to the calculator on the IRS website, and you can just punch in the number and it says, use the tax withholding estimator, and you can just play with that and see, well, hey, what's it going to mean for me if I did, 2 or 3 versus whatever you're doing now, just to see what the numbers would be and how that comes out. And again, you want to try to get, if you're somebody who's, like Craig said, you're okay at saving or at least, planning and doing some budgeting on your own, then you want to be close to zero. If you're somebody who's not going to be that way, then maybe you stay with getting your $2,500 and, doing that type of thing. Right. But it's all about getting your finances in order. As Craig said, you got to have a plan. Doesn't matter what it is. You got to have a plan, especially if we're dealing with windfalls or anything like that. Whether you're talking about retirement income, budgeting, protection planning, estate planning, anything like that. Anytime you're dealing with any of these type of things, right, Craig, with numbers, windfalls, money, you need some kind of a plan.
Yeah, I mean, what you want to do is, there's lots of times that people are in situations where they can't control what's going on with their finances. And there's unexpected expenses or just medical expense, or something happens with your kids or your family that you just weren't planning on, or you lose a job. Those things can be debilitating. But for the most part, if you have a steady income stream, you got a lot of controllables there. You can control how much you spend. You can control how much income you have based on the type of job you have and whether you want to, So what you really want to do is build a budget for yourself, or a spending plan, if you don't like the word budget. And that way, when you do have these windfalls happen, you get more leverage from them because you're not using them to pay back mishaps. You're using them to leverage and put yourself in a better position.
Right. And that's the way to be thinking of it, and to be deciding, because that's what you have to decide for yourself, right? How are you with money? That's everything that we do is all about that. The mission behind Aries is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. That's the whole idea behind it. And one of the things we try to do is try to help everybody have a clear vision of the road ahead, because we know there's, roadblocks and potholes and things that come up on our path as we're trying to get from point A to point B. And so the idea is trying to help everyone sort of guide through that. And the way we do that is what we call the roadmap to financial awesomeness. So the roadmap to financial awesomeness is just a visual of, this is all of my stuff and maybe some of the stuff I'm missing. And what does that look like? What does my picture look like? And where do I fit in all of that? And we offer to everybody that if you ever want to see it or go through the process with it, it doesn't take a lot. It's simple to do. It's an online tool, basically. You just type yes in the chat box and one of us will reach out and connect with you and figure that out. This is Greg and I in our more formal attire. Yes, those are TB12s. I was reading more about this whole thing with the Miami Dolphins and tampering and everything that's going on there. So he's supposed to be playing this year, and we're going to keep our jerseys if he does. But, for some reason, some of that might just reverse around on it and not happen now.
He's not coming back to Tampa? I mean, I knew he was talking to
Miami. No, he signed with Tampa. He was talking to Miami, and now there's this whole thing that they're looking to do like a backdoor deal, like to get him back to Miami, and this whole process. There's all this tampering stuff going on. So who knows what's going to happen there. But anyway, we're still wearing our jerseys.
Well, if he can get Miami to the Super Bowl, he is the greatest of all time.
Yes, that would be, but he would have Tyreek Hill now. So they might have Tyreek Hill. So yeah, keeping the Think with a Drink theme going. We have What's on Tap. So next week is a real special one for us. We have our friends from the Perkins School for the Blind joining us, and they're going to do this employer toolkit for inclusion and diversity hiring and workplace practices. Along with that, we'll be drinking Do Your Art, which is a limited release from Jack's Abbey. We'll have some fun with that. On the 28th, we're going to do planning or doing your dream vacation or making it affordable. And for that one, we're going to be drinking, they do beers of the world at Jack's Abbey, and this one is Iceland, and it's called an Ola Bock. that is an Icelandic beer or their version of this particular recipe. And because Iceland, I think, is a pretty cool place and could be a dream vacation, we're going to drink that. And then we won't be drinking from Jack's Abbey on the 5th because it's Cinco de Mayo. And Craig and I are going to do something special called Money and Margaritas.
Aha.
So you got to have margaritas for that.
All right. We'll have margaritas for that.
Craig, any questions in the chat box?
No, I think everybody knows what to do with the refund now.
You know what to do with the refund. Well, no, we won't say don't blow it at Jack's Abbey, but you can go visit Jack's Abbey. That's okay in terms of dealing with that. But if you ever do want to reach us, you can go to the website, www.ariesfoundation.org. You can shoot us an email. That's info@ariesfoundation.org. And like I said, we're always happy to try to answer questions. You know, the mission behind Aries is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. If there's no questions in the chat box, Craig, then I'm going to say thank you and have a good night.
You too.